Kairos, Kaifel, Kairos, Kaifel, Kairos, Kaifel, Kairos, Kaifel. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion. You might know me from such other blogs as all the other blogs. So here we are with playing as Kairos. Or is it Kairos? Or is it Kairos? Or is it Kairos? Or is it Greek and therefore unpronounceable? So the power of the future, the past, and all magic is with you. Ben Barrett, thank you for the blog post. So welcome back to TotalWar.com. Today we're talking specific mechanics for a faction. In this case, Kairos Fateweaver, legendary lord of the Oracles of Tzeentch in Total War Warhammer 3. While he is, in fact, the only legendary lord for the Chaos God of Trickery in our opening salvo for the game, we still felt it was valuable to split this out from the general Tzeentch mechanics so you could see how things work in two batches. Which is nice, because it just means you can throw in the additional legendary lords for each thing as they come out, I think, you know, it just sort of keeps them self-contained and makes sense, I think. So anyway, also you can see it in Chinese if you like, which I can't help you with that. I wouldn't understand any of it. This article will cover the information that in Warhammer 2 was on the right-hand side of the screen when you selected a legendary lord. Is that important to know which side of the screen it was on? I'm not sure. They are further split into faction mechanics and lord mechanics. Faction is usually discounts in battle abilities or special resources that version of the race has access to. It can also be shared between two legendary lords if they represent the same faction. There are no shared factions in launch Warhammer 3. However, Lord mechanics usually apply to the Lord's abilities in battle or on the campaign map, as well as unique bonuses units in their armies receive. Warhammer 3's launch legendary lords lay somewhere between Warhammer 2's launch lords and our later DLC lords in terms of complexity and unique elements, which I think is a good thing. Obviously, I love the complexity of the DLC lords, you know, towards the sort of tail end of Warhammer 2's lifespan, but if you're a new player going into that stuff, there's just so many, like, you know, wheels within wheels, trying to figure out what is, you know, just like a staple of that faction and what is unique to that lord could be very daunting. So I like that they've added complexity, but they haven't gone, like, overboard with stuff. It's, you know, all unique, but not, you know, too out there, not too, you know, difficult to figure out. At least that's his impression I get from them pointing out how they've done it. So there is a lot going on in Warhammer 3 with the standard campaign mechanics, the uniqueness of the new factions and their campaign mechanics, many of which we haven't told you about yet. Ooh. Well, I say ooh, but yeah, we haven't heard about Nurgle or Slanesh. So is that what they mean? Or do they mean that there's, like, other just general campaign stuff we haven't heard about yet? I'm assuming both are true, but I guess we'll find out. So, however, we do want these launch lords to feel interesting and powerful, even once we've blown the doors off with our DLC and FLC lords and their weird and wonderful capabilities, which is good. I like that, because the previous ones didn't. The previous, like, Warhammer 2's launch lords didn't really do anything. They were real boring. They were just the faction mechanics plus some buffs for a specific unit, and that's kind of it. There wasn't anything major going on. So yeah, I like they have unique stuff going on. So that's good. A good step in the right direction. So, naturally, it's also our job to look back on this sentence in the coming years and say we were totally wrong because we made DLC and FLC way better than expected. That is the trend. That doesn't feel like a boast to me. That's been the trend so far. They really do keep upping themselves in terms of, like, you know, complexity and stuff. It's going to be good. So, as well as those mechanics, we also will give some information about start positions, including basic stacks and settlements. While we can't show off the campaign map quite yet, it's a large and surprising beaut. It should give you a little tease of what to expect and let you start building a campaign in your head. Also, this is the first time we're going to give you some hard numbers for effects. These could change before launch. We're still in development, and if you screen cap them and put them on Reddit as definitive fact, we'll send Taurox after you. They're going to be sending Taurox after a lot of people. Alright, caveats given, ground prepared, let's get on with it. Okay, so here we go. I have to shimmy over a bit. That's right, I'm professional. Then I don't want to move my camera because then I'll have to move it back and I'll never get it in the right place again. So anyway, Kairos, Fateweaver, Oracles of Tzeentch. So it looks pretty cool. Looks pretty cool. I do like the starting thing here. Like the UI is completely changed. So I do wonder how this works. So it looks like you pick the faction and then you get the lords associated with that faction, which is interesting. That's an interesting way to go about it, rather than getting just like a infinitely expanding list of, like, you know, portraits of the thousands of lords that you have to cycle through. It didn't really work. I found it odd that when they made Warhammer 2, they made the UI less accommodating to having more legendary lords than in Warhammer 1, where you picked a faction then the lord. So they've gone back to the faction then the lord, because that's obviously easier to fit in anywhere. So I'm glad they've done that. That's good. So Kairos, Fateweaver, Oracles of Tzeentch, initial challenge, normal. Although I don't think there'll be anything normal about playing as Tzeentch. So, Lord details. Kairos Fateweaver, also known as the Oracle of Tzeentch, is the wisest of the Lords of Change. Cast right into the Well of Eternity by Tzeentch, he emerged with two heads. The left head scries the past, while the right can perceive what is yet to be, and so it is that the Fateweaver has gained infallible knowledge of both the past and the future, but is blind to what occurs in the present. Ooh. So can't see the map yet, obviously. Can't look at the settings. But I don't think we need to. So, faction effects, enemy reinforcement, time prediction accuracy. That is a big gameplay mechanic reveal. Because enemy reinforcement time prediction accuracy isn't something that has ever needed to be a thing, because there's never been a time variance for reinforcements. They just appear. You know, if they're reinforcing armies, they just turn up. So the idea that now there's going to be some fluctuation before them turning up, like, immediately or some time later down the line, and that you'll actually get a, you know, the potential for getting information on when that might be, that's amazing. That is really cool. Also, battle reinforcement time is lower, so, you know, so Kairos can reinforce easier, and the rest of his armies. This is faction effect. Which is awesome, because obviously he can see the future, right? He knows when they're going to turn up, which I think is really cool. And he knows when he's going to be needed, which I think is cool. So, hero action success chance, plus 15%. Because again, you know you know when the guards are going to change, you know? You're going to know when the shifts change, and you can sneak in and assassinate a guy, you know, all the rest of it, which is fun. Lord effects can unlock unique items that can be used to customize Kairos' spell selection. So, sounds cool. And hero enemy action success chance, minus 50%, he'll always see him coming. And ambush defense chance, plus 50%, because, again, he will always know if there's someone hiding there, you know? So, really cool. I think it's amazing. I think this is really interesting sounding. So, let's go back to the other bit. Okay, so now we've had a look at that. Yep, here's the effects. Starting simple, but interestingly, I'd say so. The first two are naturally in use whenever you're fighting huge battles towards the end of the game, with many stacks converging to determine the fate of the world. See, this I like. This stops snowballing from being such like an obvious thing where you just get two stacks and you just goon everything. The idea that it'll take longer for that second army to show up, it gives the initially attacked army a chance, you know, to do some damage to the first attacker before the other. So there's some sort of variance on how you might want to play. Depending on that, you know? Do you want to sort of turtle in the back and try and get defensive position to hold off both armies? Or do you want to really go on the offensive? And depending on how quickly the reinforcements are going to turn up, that's going to really change how you play it, which is amazing. I think that's really interesting and unique. I mean, it just seems like such an obvious thing to have that sort of variance, but to be able to actually have an indication of when they might arrive, I think is really cool too. You know, it really helps you sort of figure this stuff out. So, Tzeentch knows all and sees all. He sure does. And is far better at positioning his forces and knowing the location of the enemy than others. Something of an invisible buff. You probably won't realise how much this has helped when it has, but you'll be winning suspiciously more battles than you expect. In the chaos of the broad conflicts that can happen in Warhammer 3 between multiple factions and alliances, you also may see more battles of reinforcements than you're used to. Very cool. Excuse me, let's have some tea. This episode sponsored by tea. No, it's not. If only. It'd be easy. I could just have a cup of tea with me at all times, and which I often do behind the scenes, and then shout at you about it. It'd be easy. So if you're in the tea biz, let me know. I'd be happy to represent. So here we are with another sentence that I need to find because I've lost it. Oh, new paragraph. Great. Brilliant. We're doing better than I thought. It's also the first you will have seen some of the changes we've made to how reinforcing in battles works. I had suspected as much. There is now a timer for reinforcement, determined by various factors, making it easier to take on two armies with one smaller one, as they are naturally split. Brilliant. It also means that a tiny army, backed up by a bigger one, is a much less dangerous prospect, as you can win the battle before their reinforcements arrive. The Lightning Strike ability has also been modified to a 3-point skill. Cool. And now massively increases enemy reinforcement time for the first 2 ranks. Pardon me. Enabling Lightning Strike battles at the 3rd. That's really good, because I think it should be a big investment to be able to get that big an ability. I tend to avoid Lightning Strikes in campaign because it's dumb not to click on it, and I think that's boring because I like to have these big battles, but also I know if I have the option for Lightning Strike, why the hell wouldn't I use it? So I so often just don't. I so often just don't use Lightning Strike. Sort of, you know, intentionally making the game harder for myself because I think it keeps it more interesting. But like, for it to be like a tiered thing, the first couple of tiers just give you more options, you know, more actual strategy rather than just, oh, I'll fight a battle that has fewer decisions to make, which is boring because it's a strategy game, and the more decisions you have to make, the more meaningful the experience feels. And yeah, I'm sure you guys have been in that position. You get Lightning Strike and the entire Chaos army is killed in a turn because you just go from one to the next and no army on its own has the power to really do anything to you. So you just end up winning when you could be there trying to fight off, you know, 4 stacks all at once, which would be really fun. But you don't do that because people tend to go for the easier way out. So this I like. This I like a lot. This sort of makes things easier but incrementally, and with it getting easier, it also gets more interesting because you have more, more things to sort of affect your strategy, which I really like. So that's really cool, and a good indication of things to come, I think. So finally, if you're the one with the reinforcements on the way, you can move the reinforcement marker on the map to a place of your choosing, at the cost of extra time until the reinforcements arrive, so you can choose from which direction you want to flank. That is awesome. That is really cool. So, moving the reinforcement marker on the map, I'm assuming this is in the battle map. I'm assuming that's the case. And also that's awesome if with this, because there's always been a bit of an issue where reinforcements come in from weird directions sometimes. You know, seemingly from like a different direction to what the campaign map would suggest. In my sort of headcanon, I've always just put it down to, well, we don't know what the path is like, you know? Sure, the little, you know, little guys on the campaign map, the little, you know, chess pieces as it were, they look close together on the campaign map, but that's representing a huge amount of land. So who's to say there's not just some, like, you know, a bunch of streams or something that's going to slow down an army and force them to take a funny route round, you know? I haven't really cared much, but it's always felt a bit awkward planning from a battle on the campaign map, you know, trying to position your troops. So this just gives you a little bit more flexibility, and you can look at the terrain and take advantage. You have the information that you like to think your army would have going into a battle, you know? So I think that's really cool. I think that's really nice. This is a big deal, and these are big gameplay, you know, changes here, which I think are really cool. You know, a lot of just extra bells and whistles for the 3rd game, it seems, and that's amazing because that's going to enrich all of the previous stuff that we have been previously become bored of. You know, any battle between, like, you know, dwarves and greenskins now has all this additional stuff too. So, you know, everything is getting a facelift basically. So, for the other part, a hefty hero success chance boost has obvious benefits. Tzeentch heroes break down like this: Iridescent Horror, Assault Garrison, Assassinate and Assault units, and the Cultists of Tzeentch can damage walls, wound, hinder, and, wound and have hinder replenishment. So, get scheming. Will do. I'll get right on that. Just release the game and I'll do it. My angry face. I know, it's also my constipation face. So, Kairos Fate Weaver, Legendary Lord effects. Well, we read those too, but let's see what he thinks about it. It's all the ambush stuff. So let's just quickly deal with those latter two before we explain the former. Okay. Plenty to like there, both early and late, when hoping to avoid the enemy's more deadly objectives. It also means you're going to need to defeat Kairos in his idea of a fair fight, should you be facing him on the campaign map. Yeah, you never want to do that. You never want that. But the meat is Kairos' ability to wield spells from various magic laws beyond his own. Sponsored by tea. Taste the very boring rainbow. It's just brown. This is done through skill points placed in a unique row from level 11 onwards. There are no prerequisites, meaning you can choose which laws to take without caveats, which is awesome. That's really cool. So it is skill points placed into a unique row, which is basically... that's the same as how they did it for Oxyotl. He had a bunch of different ammo types that you could equip, you know, as followers on his army, but you unlocked those different followers, as it were, as abilities. You'd unlock the ability, you know, the skill points that would give you that you could then equip on a unit. So I think that's a fine way of doing it. I think that's fine. It does mean that you'll have to sort of invest in these different laws, which I think is sort of a shame. It would be nice if they were just unlocked and you always just had like one, you know, spell that you could sort of use. But, you know, swap between, but because you've only got the one, right? Is that going to be game-breaking, just to have one additional spell per battle? I don't know. So this does seem like a big investment of time and energy and skill points and things to get that flexibility that I would have liked to see sooner, I think, to sort of begin his campaign with, but I don't know, we'll have to see how it plays, I suppose. For all we know, you get to level 11 on turn 2, and, you know, whatever. There are no prerequisites, meaning you can choose which laws you take without caveats. Each base law, beast, death, fire, heavens, and so on, has its own fragment of power that can be equipped by Kairos once he has unlocked the skill. A second point can be put into each skill to decrease cooldowns and costs, as well as unlock the passive effect while casting for each law. When that item is equipped, these go into Kairos' arcane item slot. So again, that stops him being able to use his arcane item slot for something else, which I think is a bit of a shame. And it's going to cost Winds of Magic, which I think is also a bit of a shame. I like the idea of just basically bringing a bound spell, some obscure bound spell, you know, and just using it that way, which also makes me worry about how the magic wheel, you know, the little dial at the bottom with all the spells dotted around it, how that's going to work, because I don't want it to be like a Manfred von Karstein situation where you have to, like, there's a little arrow to swap between the two pages of spells. I'd hate that. So we'll have to wait and see how that's represented. But I don't know, I guess we'll wait and see. So each item will disable 2 spells from... Oh, okay, so it's not... you don't cycle through it. I should read these before I start talking about them, huh? That'd be boring. So each item will disable 2 spells from the Lord of Tzeentch and enable 2 spells from the Chosen Law, along with their Overcast variants. Here's a rundown of each, and we'd recommend Total War Warhammer Wiki for details on the passives and spells that aren't unique to Warhammer 3 on our Spell Laws blog, which is another blog that I totally missed. So I can't be bothered to go back to that one at this point. Just read up on it. Until we see the spells in action, I don't really care about the effects too much. Because yeah, it's just a write-up on them, so you just see what they do, but... you know, it's a bit abstract at this point, I'd say. Like, you know, you don't really see them in action, see how they synergize with the units. Like, you don't get any of that. So it's, yeah, it's mostly just, oh, an explosion. Oh. And you've seen me do that before. Oh, an explosion. So you just imagine I do that every time you see one of those, and that's your video. So, next up we have his skills. So let's see his skill tree, shall we? Okay, so he's, I'll just be in the way of his, like, campaign effect, so it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. What should we look at first? I mean, he's got some stats up here. He's got a little stat block, which is nice. He's got some good armor piercing. Melee attack and melee defense are both really low, like really low. He's also got the wound condition, so if he takes, you know, he's below half health, he suffers some debuffs, just like all large, you know, single model entities have now, which is cool. He does have siege attacker, which is nice. So he's pretty cool looking. 90 speed, which is very quick. That's because he can fly, so pretty rad. It is cool. Fear and terror, of course, I'd be scared too. Encouragement, some other bits and bobs in there by the looks of things. Some spells, you know, you can see the blue fire of Tzeentch over here, pink fire of Tzeentch, gleam magic, is over here too, so no bound spells or anything on him yet. But we can see, hates Nurgle, he sure does. Gaze of Fate, invulnerable through change, hidden in time. Ooh, hidden in time, what that does. It's got a little ability icon there, so he's got Oracle of Eternity, the Oracle, Taumaturgic Rejuvenation, Wind Summoner, Boons of Change, Bewitching Potency. So there's some pretty powerful stuff here. But now this is a bit worrying, the fact that he's got all of these spells, and then all of these spells need to be unlocked, just to unlock the chance of equipping them, which will actually replace some of the other spells you have. This to me just feels slightly wrong. It just doesn't quite feel right. I think don't replace spells, just make them an ability. That way they don't have to cost Winds of Magic, which means you get more flexibility, and he gets to feel like a more powerful spellcaster. And 2, it doesn't have to clutter up the wheel. So I think just given bound spell versions of all of them, it would actually be better. So everyone get on the phone and call up your local representative and have them do that. Because I think that would genuinely make it much, much better. And it wouldn't remove options from you. The idea of swapping 2 of your spells out for 2 other spells is, yeah, I don't like that. I want more options with my powerful, crazy spellcaster with 2 heads, not less. Or fewer. So, yeah, madness. Anyway, Prismatic Plurality. So he's got all the Tzeentch spells, which you can go and check out. Including Tzeentch's Firestorm. It's very exciting. Fragment of Gur, Fragment of Shaish, Fragment of Akshi, Fragment of Vizier, Fragment of Gairin, Fragment of Ish, Fragment of Shaman. He's got all of them. And then his main red line here, you've got the Inspiring Presence, Accursed Horrors, Myriad Servants, Many Coloured Fires, Riders of Change, Warped Retainers. So you got your missile troops here, which I'm assuming is basically your pink horrors and things. So I'm assuming that'll be the horrors. Well, it says Accursed Horrors, so you know it's a bit of an obvious one, but I'm assuming that's like all the horrors. Myriad Servants, I'm assuming, is going to be the mortal infantry, so the Forsaken, and you know who knows what else later down the line. I think there might be some chosen stuff too that Tzeentch get. I forget. Many Coloured Fires, which presumably the cavalry. Then you got the flying cavalry, and then you got the elite troops. So you know whatever they may be. Warped Retainers. So I'm assuming it's things like the Flamers and maybe the Exalted Horrors. Maybe. Possibly some other bits and bobs. We'll find out. And then Seer of Destiny. That sounds good. Then Route Marcher, Reckoning of Transmogrification. I'm assuming this is a buff to Winds of Magic on the campaign map, because remember that does work out slightly differently now. Now you have to fill up the tank of Winds of Magic on the campaign map. You know, plus and minus each turn depending on where you're stood and what stance you're in and what skills you have and all the rest of it. So hopefully that'll push that up more. It's just a guess, of course. Control through Confusion, I'm assuming that's Public Order. Elementals of Surprise, better ambush chance. Binding of the Wills. I'm not sure, actually. I mean, it seems to be a cooldown thing, so I'm not sure what that might be. Could be faster cooldown on a campaign mechanic, maybe. You know, you can do a certain campaign mechanic more often or something. Who can say? Then Lightning Strike with its 3 prongs, and Lightning Strike has been pulled forwards a bit, which I like. You don't have to unlock sort of a weird arbitrary stopgap before moving on. And if you're going with the campaign stuff, if you get like into the second bit, it means you're already doing lightning strikes. You're already just more savvy on the campaign map, which I think is actually more thematic and makes more sense. If you're getting all this stuff, this is basically just like their intelligence stat, you know. So I think it's pretty good. Anyway, that's it for that. What is nice though is at the top you can see quests. So you can actually see the quests for that particular character, so you can keep an eye on those and the objectives, which is nice. I think that's a nice added bonus there. And apart from that, that's kind of all we can see from it. Except actually, he's only on level 1. That is something worth looking at. He's only on level 1, but he has all these skill points already, so he starts with certain things leveled up, which is kind of cool that they start with something in the roster, so they have further specializations, legendary lords, before you even start playing as them, which I think is nice. That's a nice way to accentuate that thing when it's sort of generic skill tree stuff. Because of course we already with spellcasters usually have a couple of spells, but they're never marked off here. You know, it's usually you just have access to that spell, and you can put another point in it. But this is just an easier way to go, oh yeah, I have these abilities. So I think this is nice. I think there's some nice little clues as to little quality of life improvements and things, which I wouldn't have thought of, but I appreciate. So, good news. Okay, so here we go with the fragment. So, Law of Beasts here, the Fragment of Gur. If you equip that, you're going to gain Curse of Anna here and Transformation of Kadon. but you're going to lose Glean Magic and Infernal Gateway. And you will have Wild Heart as a passive. So the passives make these incredibly useful, because these lore attributes are really powerful things. So, you know, Wild Heart will give you, well, who knows what it'll actually give you now. They might change it in Warhammer 3, but presumably more Winter Magic power reserve and recharge rate, I believe, with Wild Heart. So that's really useful. Lore of Death, Fate of Buno and Purple Sun Azirius. So big hitting spells here, big damage spells. But you do lose Zinch's Firestorm and Treason of Zinch, which I think are both also damaging spells. So, you know, you're kind of swapping one thing for another. Just Life Leeching, though. Again, spell recharge, which is good. Akshai, Fire, of course. Piercing Bolts and Burning. Piercing Bolts of Burning and Flaming Sword of Ruin, but you lose Glean Magic and Infernal Gateway. I mean, that gives you some nice utility, I think. And the passive is Kindle Flame. I imagine this will be the one that I have equipped all the time, just because all of his abilities are, like, all of his army spew fire at people, which I'm pretty sure does count as fire damage, even though technically it's not fire, it's just like magic. Ooh, you know. Zinch in it, but I think it still counts as fire. So with Kindle Flame, it means every time you cast a spell, you are giving a huge bonus to the damage that most of your army will be doing at range, which is kind of a big deal. So that immediately just wins, and what's the point of bringing anything else? So Heavens, Comet Cassandura, Curse of Midnight Wind, Gyron, Regrowth and Shield of Thorns, Hish, Birona's Time Warp, and Net of Amantok. This is actually pretty big. That's actually quite a big deal. And Exorcism gives immune psychology, which is meh, whatever. But yeah, being able to net something, that's also good, because you can also do a lot more damage with ranged units if it can't move. So, pretty good. And Barona's Time Warp is also really powerful. Really big attack bonuses. So if you do end up with all these sort of hybrid units that should be spewing fire but are stuck in combat, yeah, just buff their melee attack and speed a huge amount, and either get them the heck out of there or keep them in there and kill everything. Either one. So, Fragment of Shaman. Metal Shifting gives extra armor piercing damage, which can be useful. Transmutation of Lead and Final Transmutation, both big hitters, so that's nice. And Ulgu for Shadow, Occam's Mind Razor and Penundral Pendulum. Again, both very good. And Smoke and Mirrors gives extra speed, which could be good if you're playing a kiting game. So I guess there are reasons to bring, you know, additional spells or different lore attributes. But Kindle Flame, I think, is going to be far and away the most popular sort of default for most people, I think. So, starting roster. So this is starting roster here, which is very cool to see. I do have a close-up of that, but we don't really need it. And you can see the Winter Magic tank on the side, so you can see how that mechanic works now. It's got a bit more, you know, emphasis on it, and you can see the plus whatever, so you can see where you're stood and all of the other modifiers, you know, whether this tank will go up or down, so you can see how much you'll have in your reserves when you get into a battle, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really fun mechanic that I talked about in a previous blog, so you can go dig through those, I suppose. So, Kairos starts his campaign on the border of Cathay, with the region capital in his control, a Warriors of Chaos faction, Kazag, inhabiting 2 of the settlements. Interesting. So I guess we have to fight them and make them bend to our will. And the minor Cathay faction, Imperial Wardens, in the final slot of that region. A nice way to sort of secure your troops and then introduce you to the enemy that you'll be facing for the rest of the campaign, which I think is rather nice. So the Imperial Wardens also have an army on your borders, cheeky sods. Get away from my borders. Uniquely, you are not at war with Kazakh. Oh, okay. And can use the changing of the ways to take their nearby settlement as early as turn 2. Ah, okay. That's kind of fun. So, of course, with Zinch, he has campaign mechanics where he can literally just have people swap ownership of settlements from faction to faction, whether it be with each other or with you. You know, you can just change ownership of settlements, which is very cool. So it looks like you can go ahead and do that, which is nice. On the other side lies a minor Khorne faction, Karneth's Sons, some more Zinchian followers in the Flaming Scribes and a few native denizens of the Darklands. Tutorials, natural inclination, and the fact you can't make peace will push you off towards Cathay, but those bastion gates are not easy targets, and the powerful armies of Miao Yin will regularly rove outside the walls to try and sack your settlements. Very cool. I like the idea of having an enemy that actually has a really strong defensive position. That is way more interesting than the usual, they're within a turn of me walking there and I have siege attackers, so I guess I'll just take a settlement per turn until they're dead. You know, that's often the case. So the idea of them having just like a really tough outer wall, you know, that you have to get in before you can start. The usual, okay, defeated your big defenses, now let's just round up everything. And by then, maybe they've got allies coming to help. It just feels like more of a hurdle. And that's good. Stop snowballing. So, well-placed... I am there, right? Yes, well-placed walls and picking off or subjugating the other Warriors of Chaos faction, the dreaded Woe, will serve you well. So this is interesting that you can subjugate Warriors of Chaos factions. I don't know if there's a mechanic for subjugation, or if it's simply he means just take over the settlement. You know, declare war on them and then take it. Or doing the swapping of possession settlement thing. I don't know. But we'll find out. Because I do really want to know how the Chaos Demon factions interact with the Chaos Warriors factions, because they would sort of be at odds up until the point where the Chaos Warriors just go like, okay, yeah, we're definitely on your side. We're going to war, are we? Great. There's obviously going to be some attrition just because Chaos is Chaos, and they'll always have lots of infighting and punish their followers for just weird perceived slights that maybe their followers aren't even aware of. They're just not very orderly, funnily enough. So they're a bit not unreliable. You know what I mean. They'll do baffling stuff. Let's leave it at that. I can't think of the word. Anyway, so Kai... wait, no, I'm not there yet. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. I'm here. Alternatively, you could head west towards the rest of the Chaos Wastes in the fringes of Kislev, or strike south, looking for a way into Cathay from the mountains. Very cool. So Kairos' starting stack consists of himself, 3 units of blue horrors. Cool. They look actually really good in the pictures. I like the pictures because there's emphasis on, I've got a knife, I've got a flipping knife. You know, there's their parents running after them going, put that down. So anyway, also there's 2 packs of Screamers, so a lot of flying units for starters, which is terrifying, and 1 unit of Furies, so even more flying units. So you've got some good like shock cav style flying units, and some just good ones for pestering the back line, which is really cool. This is a really interesting army. You know, that's really diverse. I mean, he's flying. I mean, everything's either flying or is a weird sort of missile infantry unit, which is really cool. That is super unique as a starting roster. I really like the look of that. I think that's going to be very fun. I think it's going to be very fun to play. So it's certainly it's agile, but certainly on the weaker side of starting stacks overall. Really? I feel like that would be able to do so much work, but I mean, I don't know what stats are for this stuff. They might be quite versatile, but with low stats, you know. Their stat line might not be great. Especially in a group of 160. You don't expect them to be good units, but that's a lot of fire they can throw down, right? So anyway, we'll figure it out, I'm sure. So, and while we've rated it as a normal starting difficulty, you'll certainly have to plan some good invasions and use Tzeentch's mechanics to the fullest to make progress. Playing defensively and gathering your power to sprint up a territory, as well as making some strategic alliances to the west and south, is another option. So that's really cool. I really love the sound of all this. This is all really promising. The amount of like little campaign mechanics and things they've snuck in there is great. Is really good. I was expecting just to see stuff about Kairos, but no. The fact that he has mechanics that play on the new mechanics being introduced is really cool. That's really cool indeed. I'm thrilled about this one. So weave your victory or fall to the past. Kairos, Fateweaver, is a thinking player's legendary lord, though one just as prone to rampant savagery as intricate plans. Get you a greater demon who can do both and conquer the world in early 2022 with Tzeentch. Sponsored by tea. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. It's a cup of tea. So let's end the episode, I suppose. I kind of want to know more. I want to know more now. I want to get my hands on this guy. I'm starting to get a little bit sad that we're not playing with these yet. But one day, guys. One day. Soon. Soon. I mean, it's November now. It's crazy. It's almost the end of the year. Which is when we were supposed to have got the game. I'm really sad that we don't get to play it yet. But it looks like it's shaping up incredibly. So that's great, you know. I'm only mad at the delay now because I'm so excited about all the stuff we're getting. But a lot of that is obviously going to be, you know, due to it being delayed, so I can't really complain. You know, I want it all to work. I think it's quite an important one. So, yeah, I'm thrilled with this. This sounds awesome. So, guys, I don't know what you think and what you're most excited about for it. And, yeah, I'll see you in the comments. So, guys, comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.